Hello guys, and welcome to another video where we're going to be looking at creating a character for Unreal Engine this time. So in Blender I've been working a little bit on this new workflow that is, I like it a lot, and people are in the comments, it's a bit mixed. It's some people really like it, like whoa, mind blown, and some people are going, why are you doing that? It seems like more work than what you did before. But there are a few benefits with this model that I actually like quite a bit. So first of all, I find it when I box model, it's a little bit difficult to get the proportions correct straight out of the box. And if I do like the shape out or the block out of the character just using cylinders and squashed spheres basically, I find it a little bit easier to find a good pose for the character. So I just usually create the torso, the upper body, just limbs, arms, legs, hand and a head. And I just mirror those and make sure that everything feels pretty good. And it's a little bit easier to find the pose that way. I find that to be going a lot quicker. And then I remesh it with the remesh tool. And I go into sculpting. And sculpting is not my strong side, but I'm actually learning a few things. There are a few things that are really important about it. And that's, first of all, G to grab and just gradually, it's basically like proportional editing, but for sculpting. So it's much easier to just drag those, especially if you reduce the strength a little bit. Then after you remesh the character, you can use that grab tool or the grab brush to just slide things into place. It's like a really neat way to do it. And I like to work on the sculpt, which is fairly low poly, but not high poly, not low poly. It's like sort of in between. And then I use the grab tool and the grab brush to just slide things into place. And then I use the shift middle mouse button is really good as well, because that's the smoothing. And if you reduce the strength of the smoothing, that's important. Thank you, Flat Black, for saying that. Then it's really handy. You basically just shift and middle mouse click, and then just like basically fix those little things that are a bit too rough and slide it into place. So I find it's a pretty quick way to get a character into the rough shape that I want, but the topology is not good enough yet. And previously I tried to decimate it, but that creates a lot of triangles, which I kind of like in some ways, but I don't in many other ways. So the method that I came up with that I really like is that I do box modeling now on top of the sculpt. And the sculpt I actually set to just a transparent material. And then I create a box modeling where I just extrude the boxes, and I have the shrink wrap modifier on the box, so I can see in real time that it snaps to my sculpt. And now I can really efficiently slide the box up, extrude it, and then just make sure I cover the limbs. And when I do that, it creates a perfect topology for the what I'm looking for. And I'd say that it's still faster than my traditional way of just box modeling from the scratch, simply because I don't have to care too much about the shape now. That'll just snap into place, but the box topology itself is good. So I think that like if I were to disable the shrink wrap modifier, the box itself would look hideous. But now it creates a low poly mesh that I really like the look out of it. So it's pretty ready now to go into refinement, and I have to do a few tweaks because sculpting doesn't really like to be in mirror mode. So I just have to solidify the mesh into one object, and then I use symmetry when I do sculpting. But then when I go back to box modeling, I always switch back onto just my trusted mirror modifier. But I can still use the tools of sculpting, the G to slide it into place. And pretty quickly now, I felt like I had a character that had... I've always struggled a little bit with like muscles and... well, I don't go to the gym, maybe that's why. But I've struggled to get that into the game engine as well, or to my game characters, that I don't really get the topology and the muscle definition any good. So I wanted to create a character that was a little bit larger this time, with some more muscles. And I think, again, I should probably study anatomy a little bit better, because I don't really know it. But I do Google some references, and for this I just put like, I searched for bodybuilder, and then I just looked roughly what the muscles were like, and where, like, how muscles stretch across the chest up to the arm, and where the bicep goes. And then I tried to exaggerate it a little bit. And so now I'm back into manually refining this. Most of this stuff is going out of Sculpt now, and it's my traditional method of just extruding, selecting verts, and grabbing one vert by one vert, because we're still at such a low poly count that it's very manageable. And it's still like maybe twice the poly count that I'm used to, but it's really nice to have this this character, the mesh and the topology. I think it's perfect now. It could be used in a game You could easily UV unwrap this. You could easily texture paint it as well. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to create my character the way I usually do, with a fancy pixel palette texture instead. That's the style. I'd say not only is it a way to avoid UV unwrapping and texture painting, I actually like the style of it, where it's, I keep calling it like modern pixel art, because it's clear, crisp colors. It's it's just nice to not have to worry about any textures, and everything is just, I don't know, it's a particular style. And for this character, I also created a pair of pants, and I did the same way. I just used the shrink wrap modifier, and then I extruded it, and I just modeled that in the exact same way that I did the character as well, and refined those a little bit. So overall, I'd say for any game that I'm doing super simple, like the crisply low poly characters, I would still go probably for my very, very simple box modeling technique. But for the next level up from that, if I need a little bit more detail, and for the characters that I'm doing for Ultranova, for example, I need that extra bit of details, because they're going to be zoomed in on when there are some cutscenes, and just basically camera will actually move up closer to them, not only in cutscenes, but in game as well at sometimes. So I think this is a level of poly count is better suited for that. And I also just spent a bit of extra time on this character to do some of the clothing, because in Unreal Engine I want to play around with the physics simulation. I believe Unreal Engine is pretty good actually at simulating physics, like not only cloth as well, but you could have accessories. I saw a dev video from the Unreal Engine development team where they had a character. It was like a big fatso character, a green monster, and they'd put him like with loads of props. He had like a drum with it that was connected with a chain that was created of chain links, and then he was like banging the drums, and they had like stuff hanging off his shoulders. He had the fat was like blobbing about, and all of that was physics driven. So for Ultranova, I'm pretty excited when it comes to my characters, because I'll be able to put some clothing on them. Some of the characters will have longer hair, some of them will have a scarf. All the characters are pretty much defined for the game already in terms of how they should be as characters. So I'm really excited to be able to turn those characters now and put the clothing on them, because otherwise they'd be naked, and that would be probably not allowed to be published. So I'm looking forward to simulating that. I think Unity can do something similar, but I haven't really been playing too much in like that domain of things. But for this character, it's just a basic a pair of pants, so I could cover him up a little bit, and then I turned him into a monster as well. So maybe not the smartest things to do, but I wanted to extrude crystals from his back. So in my traditional box modeling editing technique, I just extruded things off of his back that I was going to colorize as crystals, and then I just went for basic skin tones and then some like leather colored on the pants. For the face, I extruded a beard, and then I shaped the face a little bit, and I'm not sculpting at this point. I was just doing my box modeling technique. All the polys were there, all the poly count that I needed, so I found it really like suitable to do this, like just continue doing it my old school way here. And I also wanted to create a bit of a skeleton head on him. So for the eyes, again, I actually went a little bit lower poly here than I do, because I usually extrude the eyes inwards. But in this case, I just insetted those polygons by the eyes, and then I colorized those in a darker color. And then I also did the nose in the same way. I just colorized the nose as like the cavity of a skull. So for facial hair, I wanted to turn them into more like facial hair / tentacles or something, or braided the beard or something. So I extruded some separate strands, and then I reshaped the head to turn it a little bit more into a skull. So on my monitor and on the left side, I Google search just some random images so I can get some ideas of like what a skull could look like. And but I don't use it for blueprinting or putting it as a background. I find that takes too much time. I just need some basic inspiration, really. I think that's the key thing. And I also do my fake ambient occlusion thing, where I select some particular polygons under the arms and around the torso, and then I colorize those in a darker color. I find that's a pretty, like a nice way to give them a cartoony look as well. And then for his shoes, I just colorized those as well and made some brown shoes. And then we've got the crystals, and and they're not crystals yet because they're like brown. And then I also noticed on a lot of the reference images that I did look on the other monitor, I saw like by the rib cage, there's like a cavity that comes up like where your stomach is a little bit. So I colorized those a little bit extra too. So I was pretty happy. I mean, this character would be in most of my games from the distance that you view them. I'd be able to take this character right now and just import it straight into the game engine and rig it and have it ready to go. But I wanted to do a little bit of extra detail this time because it's more of a practice. There's no particular use for this character that I'm making now. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more detail and try to get some muscle definitions now. And I think probably the best way, if you want to go for that level, is to start texture painting it instead of doing my pixel palette texture. But I wanted to push it a little bit to the limit to see like how far could I go with this now. So I started to extrude some fake muscles. Again, I just looked at some images of cartoony like monsters, like the Hulk and things, and then I looked roughly how muscles are going. And I'm bound to my topology now, which is a quad topology. So it's not perfectly suitable to create muscles out of those because they're not usually voxelized in that way. But I wanted to still give it a go, so I went for it. And then just started to extrude things. And usually when I extruded like muscle groups, I selected the loop around the muscle group as well, and then it just shaded using the ambient occlusion method again to shade those down into a bit of a darker color. So when I do it this way, I have to modify the topology a bit like now because it's a really nice topology, but I need to slide my quads a little bit and rotate them a little bit so I get less voxelized. I don't want it to look like a Minecraft world on his body. So that'd suck. And for topology, I think there is a paid add-on called, what is it called? Actually, I looked that up. I have a note of that somewhere. It is called Quad Remesher. Someone put in the comments that I should have had a look at a Quad Remesher, and then I'm going to bring that. So Quad Remesher is a paid add-on that you can pay. I think it's $60. And it seems really, really good, to be honest. And I'm probably going to get it at some point. I tend to want to stick to free included stuff because all the videos I create, I want to make sure that people don't have to spend money to do what they need to do in Blender. But for my own purpose, I might look into Quad Remesher, and I saw a video where they compared different retopology methods, all the way from going from manual, which is still the best result, but it takes hours and hours. And then using the remeshing within Blender, it's not so good. I mean, it works, but it's not great. And then with the Quad Remesher, it seems to be creating a really, really good result. So I'm looking forward to trying that. Maybe I can create a bit of a video on that. So, but for now, I'm just going my method here. And after doing the stuff, I needed to... I found that if I light my character as well, it looks a little bit better. So when I had the muscles in place and I had shaped the character the way I wanted it to, I put my normal, like a reddish light on the left and a blue light on the right. And then I just lowered the HDRI, the internal lighting within Blender. And I keep render preview so I can just see, or material preview it is. And then I could get a feel for what the character was looking like now. And I was really happy with the result. It's got a good topology. It's got much more interesting features than my normal characters because now it's got I have the freedom to add a little bit of like muscles, and I think it wouldn't hold up to zooming close, but it's creating a pretty distinct character look the way I feel it now. I think so. I don't know what you think. I also gave him a 6-pack. So in the same way, I just zoomed in on his torso, and then I selected strips along where the 6-pack muscles are, and then I extruded those as well, just in the same way that I did before. And I also make sure that around all the edges of the muscles that I've created, I stretch them out. Maybe I use sculpting and the G brush. I think that's a nice way to do it, or even the smoothing tool I found is really good when I'm in sculpt mode. Even if I'm doing this low poly character, I can do the sculpting part because I'm not adding any topology. I'm not using Dynotop or anything like that. It's just shaping them into better shape. That's all. And then, so colorize it around the edges, shade it down a little bit where it's dark, and try to avoid those obvious voxelized shapes on the character, so it doesn't look, again, like a Minecraft world. But it still looks a bit blocky now, I think. I noticed as well that it was hunched over a little bit, and I tried to use the pose brush. There's actually a pose brush, believe it or not, that kind of twists the character, but I found it difficult to use, so I couldn't really repose the top of the character. So I had to manually go in and try to proportionally edit that and straighten his back out a little bit. I don't know why I didn't capture that sooner in the process, but I think after some tweaking, it worked out pretty good. I had to fix the pants a little bit afterwards as well, because they didn't get caught in the process. But it was some minor tweaks. Poly count is a little bit higher now, of course, than I'm used to. And this is stretching it the way the number of polys now, I'd say, is stretching it for my use. Still be perfectly fine to use in a game engine. It's not that many, but for it's definitely starting to venture out of the low poly range that I'm used to. So, and I'd probably, for my characters, I might just stick on one subdivision less and not go for all the definitions on the muscles, unless maybe it's like a big monster. I think for bosses it'd be good in games, because they're gonna get blown out like 3, 4, 5 times the size of the character sometimes, and so that'd be good. And I've noticed that he's got the smallest legs in the world, and luckily enough I caught that so I could start stretching them, because that's the downside when you don't use like a proper reference or a blueprint. Then proportions can get a little bit strange. But I think I caught it in time, so I managed to pull out his legs a little bit. I had to stretch them a fair amount. I don't know why I didn't spot that earlier, but I'm glad I did anyway, to try to get him a little bit more. Still like skipped leg day most of the time anyway, but it's at least it's a bit better than before. For the hands also, I still do like a lot of mitten style hands instead of individual fingers, because I didn't feel like I'd need to, like he'd just grab a weapon or keep a fist. And then I didn't really feel the need to go for individual fingers. It'd be so much easier to rig if I do it this way, usually, and if the game doesn't require it. So in terms of clothing, it doesn't have a tremendous amount, but I did put some like half leather gloves on him as well, to cover up the fact that he doesn't have any proper fingers, maybe. Finally, colorizing the crystals a little bit, so they're not like just a brown color. I tried some different things. And I think in the end I settled for like a purple look. Should probably try to get them a little bit translucent or something. And for rigging, I just create my own rig for this character. So I create my normal style. I create an armature with see-through. I extrude it up, and including the head, and then I extrude the arms and the leg and down to the feet. And I just post it into place, put the bones in. I've done quite a few videos, especially my yellow thumbnail, Learn Low Poly Character Modeling. That one covers this process in detail if you want to look at this. So after I create the bones, I just name them, and it's important to name the left side of the bones .L on the end, because then we can use auto symmetry afterwards. And that goes for both the arm, the hand, and the leg and the foot. And then for the leg, I do inverse kinematics as well, because it's nearly impossible to animate the character without having that in place. So from the knee, I extrude a bone, which is the IK pole target, which is where the knees are aiming to. And then at the back of the foot, I extrude one back called IK target for the foot, because that one will control the leg. And when you enable inverse kinematics now, when you just drop the torso, it'll bend the legs and makes it so much easier to animate. For arms, I don't tend to use so much IK, even though it's a pain to animate some things without it. But it's I find IK switching between IK and forward kinematics is so stupid. I don't know why it's not simpler in Blender. And I guess it's the same in multiple modeling software as well. They just keep it so awkward for some reason. Because you have to create like a separate bone structure for IK bones, separate structure for forward bones, a separate for deformation bones, and you have to link them together and copy it and create some sort of a driver and animate like a little fake slider to slide between the two, and you get lost in the end. So I tend to just animate arms without, just in forward kinematics. After I'd weight painted this one, I just did like post the character a little bit into place to see if it could deform. This was the first time now at this stage that I could test the deformation of the character, and I'd say that it was pretty good. The now is when weight painting is struggling a little bit when it comes to... This one is still alright, but the clothing is a problem. because the clothing is separate mesh, so the auto deformation skin painting is not great, I'd say, when it's separate mesh. It works for a solid big mesh, but for my next character I actually ended up getting a separate tool for that, which is I have to look up the name for it, but it's like a voxel based, heat map based thing that does a really good job, so I'll cover that in another video. For this character I added a light source from underneath as well, like a red fiery light, because I imagine as a boss in a level you'd have some red light coming up. And then I also modified my shader to give him a little bit of a stain, and it's still my Infansia Pixpal palette texture, so all the colors are coming from there, but then I created noise mapping based on just the mesh position offset, and then that way I could randomly just create shades and slight hue shifts in a pattern that's a bit like stained. So again, it's more of a, whether it's perfect or not, I don't know, probably not perfect, but I think for some of these monster characters where you want to have a little grunge look to them, it works pretty good. So I could control, I have some sliders where I can just set how much the brightness difference should be between those clouded areas and how much the hue shift should be. So I can take like a skin tone and shift it a little bit in either direction on brightness and hue. And I think it creates a pretty interesting, it definitely adds definition. It could be either that it's like, either it's a stylized option to have it that way, or it's, it could be dirt, it could be, yeah, it could be many things. So, but I like it. I think it's pretty good actually. I liked it. I also decided to go down and create an alternative version of this character. So I have my quad topology, which I'm super happy about, but I also wanted to look similar to what I did last time. What happens if I do a decimate modifier on this one? And I wanted to compare the two, both in terms of the way they look and also how they deform. And there's something about the triangulated look that I still like. So I'm wondering if I'm not actually preferring the decimated version of this character. It takes away the voxelized look of the muscles that I made, and it just creates it a little bit more like a abstract character that you're not traditionally seeing in the same way. It doesn't have the perfect topology. I do have some problems, but I noticed that if I go in sculpt mode, I can use the smooth tool to just shift out those polygons that get a little bit over the top triangulated or stretched. So I'd say that it's definitely a viable option. I'm not sure which one to go for in my games yet. I have to do a little bit more testing, both in terms of deformation to see how well they deform and the looks as well. Maybe I have to do some A/B testing and get your help. Maybe you guys can help out as well. So from what you can see, do you prefer the more detailed one with the quad topology, or do you like the left one here, which has got fewer verts, which is the decimated modifier one? And the left one, which is reduced, it's got 1124 verts. So that's pretty low poly. And for my higher detail, it's 4131 poly. So it's actually nearly 4 times as many with the quad topology. And the decimated one has got just over 1000 verts, which is pretty incredible, I think. Looks wise, it nearly looks like it's texture painted, but this is all the Infansia Pixpal texture now. And it's just colorized polygons. But the lighting as well does a lot of work here. So in a game engine, if you need them to work around in daylight, which I'm actually going to bring him into Unreal Engine, you'll see that it doesn't look as good. But it's with the lighting the way it is like this, it helps it a lot. And I know that people that do cell shading for games, they actually do fake rim lighting on the cell shaded characters. They don't rely on the world lights alone, because you need a bit of fake light in all this. If you try to light the scene so the character will always look like that, it wouldn't work, because it's in a certain spot in the world, it'll look like that. But when you look from behind, it looks stupid, because then it's got like a big shiny blue light on the back. So I think I'm going to research a little bit and do individual shaders that are actually suited, so it always gives the character this look, because I can do that and base it on the camera angle, and then I'll always have it so it's got a bit of a defined lighting. So because I don't like when the light hits it straight on, but when it hits it from the sides especially, and it does some rim lighting effect, I think that looks really good. So that's probably the way to go. A combination of good lighting in the game, but also the right camera angles, and then maybe some fake cell shade, not cell shading, but fake rim lighting of the models, I think would do a big difference as well. This character I tested in Mixamo as well. So I exported the character as an FBX file and then I imported it into Mixamo because I wanted to see how this decimated version of the character was deforming inside. I could test it like manually in Blender, but I thought I'll upload it to Mixamo to see. And here we see now the lack of lighting. First of all, it actually missed the colors altogether. So it just turned out to be a white character. That looked kind of cool too, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. But animation wise, it seemed to work like straight out of the box, decently at least. You also have a problem with Mixamo. I never actually ever used their animations in a game. The reason why is because I always want to have the creative control of making my distinct own character movements, and usually my characters have their own skeleton that are really requiring them to be animated separately, because even though Mixamo animations would work, it still looks like just like a, I don't know, like a human doing something. And I usually, for my characters, I usually want to have it a little bit more distinct or snappy. So in order to get the colors in, I had to modify and create a basic shader version because it doesn't support all the features that I have in my Pixpal palette texture version now. So I created a more basic version of it so I could export it, and only the albedo map or the diffuse map is the only thing I wanted to include on it. So I brought a really basic material in, and when I exported it now, I could bring those colors into Mixamo as well. And you can see the difference here now. Without the lighting, it looks very, very different. But in terms of animation, it seems to be working, and I tried a bunch of them. The usual suspects are the stuff where you need to roll or dive, or where the head is close to the ground, or you get a lot of issues where the character is actually going through the floor. But overall, I'd say that it worked pretty good. Most of the stuff out of the box. And then I tried to find a little bit longer animations inside Mixamo. Most of them are really short, like hits and punches, or like the odd kick or something. Maybe a breakdancing thing. But I try to find a bit longer segments of animations, so I usually end up settling for some funky dance moves, and then it looks absolutely ridiculous. But overall, I think most of the characters, most of the animations work pretty good, and I'd probably look into downloading a few of the animations and then try to tidy them up. For the first time now, I actually downloaded one. I didn't even know I had access to it. Maybe it's from my Creative Cloud subscription or something, since they became a part of Adobe. Not sure. But I could download one of them, so I downloaded just a basic dance move so I could try to import it into Blender. And I don't know. It's when I don't have full control of my keyframes and I animate it, I get a little bit scared when I bring it into Blender, because I don't know, the skeleton, it's gone out as an FBX and came back, and feels like the rotations have been adapted magically on Mixamo. So I couldn't really get used to it. When I brought it in, I felt like something's a little bit broken here. I mean, it works, but it's something's happened to my mesh. Something's broken with the armature. So if I were to do that in a game, I don't know, it feels pretty tough. Feels like I'd run into issues that I'd have to just put like band-aids on the whole time. Right, so I found an animation that was a bit longer, a bit ridiculous looking, but I downloaded it and then I imported it into Blender and to have a look at what it looks like. And keyframes, there's like a billion of them. The skeleton, for some reason, is tilting forward and it's not behaving at all the way I wanted to. So really scary. Well, maybe someone's specialized in this and this makes perfect sense to them, but it doesn't to me. But the animation itself worked in the end. But again, I don't know if I could just bring it into a game engine. I guess you'd have to bring it in and try to rectify it and modify it. So I don't know. I'm actually going to look into Cascadeur instead, which is a software where you use physics aids to assist you in animating a character. So it's more about finding the key poses, and then that can estimate the balance and the physics required to get into those positions. I've been meaning to look at that for a long time, but I haven't just yet probably. But at some point I will, I'll probably test some animations in there. Yeah, I don't know why it's requiring me to tilt the character now, like manually. I'm so far out of my comfort zone here that it's absolutely ridiculous. It's like tilting the character to match the pose. And so I could re-weight paint my other character to see if the higher topology version worked. It's not an ideal situation here. Not ideal. But it was just for the deformation test. And this feels like someone's got a Word template of of some form and try to, like, instead of using the word template to what it's supposed to do, you use, like, you press enter a bunch of times and space to align things, and then you sort of, it looks all right for the time being, but slight is changed in the future and you're in a heap of pain. So that's what I felt like doing that. But again, I just wanted to be able to compare the quad mesh to the decimated one and see how they deformed with this dance separately. So I just wanted to get it to be good enough. But I ran into some stretchy, funky issues as well. There's like, something's so broken that and then the weight painting started to get off, and I was like, I'm starting to feel like I was wasting time here. So I imported my character into Unreal Engine to see what that would work like, because I know I'm so uncomfortable in Unreal Engine. The export and import process is still a pain to me, and I have to remind myself how to do it. And there's some finicky stuff, but I'm surprised to see that my Pixpal palette texture actually works now without with having the infinite small polygons. That never used to work. So I was a little bit surprised to see that they must have changed something, I guess, because it works now, which is kind of cool. But the import settings, you have to do some changes to the FBX settings to get the faces not to be smooth all over. So I have to do some tweaks in the export process. Again, probably create a dedicated video for that to when I do get it right in the end, because it'll take a few tries, but I'll get there in the end. To get the colors right, I had already created my Infanzia Pixpal palette texture inside a Unity project, or no, inside an Unreal Engine project. So I grabbed that in and see what it looked like, and I think the character looks alright. Again, the lighting doesn't look as good now as in Blender because it's in broad daylight. Didn't look quite as good. But then I also, in the third-person template, I wanted to replace my character now and see if I could get my character to move in here. And that's not super straightforward, so I ended up having my character was just sliding around a little bit, like a weirdo. In the end, I looked at a tutorial and it basically said, make your life easy and use the mannequin armature instead of creating your own. So usually I like to keep my own armature at all times because it fits my character, but in Unreal Engine it feels like so much stuff is rigged into that skeleton to get it to work properly. So I bit the bullet and then I thought, okay, I'll have to look at a tutorial and see how do I actually export this skeleton, which I didn't manage to do. But I did find a add-on that I could get that would actually isolate the mannequin and bring it into Blender, so I ended up doing that. So I used game rig tools in the end. That seems to be a really good add-on. I wanted to try if it worked first, so I grabbed the free one, but I don't have any problems paying for stuff if people have put a lot of effort into it. So I'll be going back to that one and dropping a nice donation because I think it's worth it. It seems to work really good. I found out after this video, so I'll make sure that I stick to my word there as well and pay for that because it's worth it. So once I downloaded the Game Rig Tools add-on and implemented it, I had to look at some tutorial videos just to get myself acclimatized, and I ran into a few issues where I couldn't quite follow first, so I had to revisit it and look like, what did I do wrong? Why can't I rotate the bones? Why can I not scale it? But it turned out I was trying to scale the bones, but you have to scale the little tip controllers there. There are like some sort of gizmos that you have to scale. Instead, I was trying to scale the bones. But I believe it's perfectly fine to reshape the character and the bones. You should try to stick to it as normal as possible, but it was okay to scale it. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna try it for this character. So it felt weird, but I was allowed to scale my bones and scale them and rotate them into place. And for the hands, since I don't need all those bones, so it feels like unnecessary to have all of them there. But I wanted to make life easy, so I just decided to keep that, like, the fingers inside there anyway. And I had to tab back and forth to the video to show me the instructions pretty much the whole time, so I could figure out how it worked. But after you post the character's bones, then you basically do a switch over to the deformation bones after you've done the control bones or the pose itself, and then you can do the weight painting, and it's pretty ready to go then to bring into Unreal Engine. I don't know why there's not an easier way to import a material as well from one project to another. I have to open my other project and then migrate that information, like my texture or my material, and I have to migrate that to a different project. I find that process to be really annoying and tedious. And not only that, it looked like it disappears from the project that you're migrating it from, because when I migrate the material from one project to another, from my source project, it disappears in the list, but it's not actually gone. It's you have to rebuild like some meta links or something for it to reappear, but it's still there. So I think it was just like a bit of a hack that has been staying with Unreal Engine for pretty much forever. So I'd like to see an improvement there. In Unity, it's really easy. You can export a package, just export package, and then you import that package into the other one. Or you can just copy some of the assets over from the folder structure as well, if it's a material and a texture. So that'd be kind of cool if it improved a little bit in the future. I had to do this quite a few times. I had to repeat the process because it was easy to get stuff wrong. Bone rotations was one issue, calculating normals, getting smooth shaded instead of flat shading. So I had to tweak the export settings and the import settings quite a bit again, and I don't think I'll ever get used to it, but I'll just have to live with it. Maybe if I do like 20 characters or 30 characters and I keep it on repeat, I'll finally learn it. So finally I got to the point where I could use the third person template and import my character and then just replace the skeletal mesh with my own character. And it worked pretty good. All the foot positioning, the running animations, the idle, everything worked. The only thing I didn't like is the fact that the character inherits a pose. And I think this is the problem that you run into when you reshape your character's bones into fitting something that it wasn't really designed for. Because I felt like it was like curling the arms forward, the shrugging the shoulders or something. So I realized that it's probably not the best method to modify that at all. So for characters that are meant to be reusing the animations that are in Unreal Engine, I would probably stick to just using the vanilla stock mannequin shape of the skeleton instead. Because I did feel, I believe you can tweak it, and I tried it here a little bit. I tried to reposition my bones a little bit and change the pose a little bit. But no matter what I did, it still felt like it wasn't natural. Maybe it's the poses of the animation as well. So I also try to modify the animations inside of Unreal Engine, where I tweak the idle animation. So I was trying to override the idle animation. So instead of having the shoulders like tucked forward like this, I tried to get them to move back. And it wasn't great success. It still looks a bit off. So I think either there's two ways to go here. One is that you stick to the basic armature and you go all the way with that one. You create characters that fit those proportions and fit that mannequin. Or you create your own armature, but you also do your own animations in that case, and you also do your own control rig inside of Unreal Engine to fit that character's pose. Don't try to retarget other animations that were not designed for a character with those proportions, because I think it's gonna look a bit uncanny in the end. Like most of my stuff looks uncanny anyway, like this weirdo, this creep. But anyway, in the end, I had the character inside of Unreal Engine and it was running around. The final thing I did before I saw that this little practice project was done, I wanted to try to recreate the look that I had inside Blender. So I turned down the lights and then I created the lighting inside of Unreal Engine, an orange one and a blue one. And then I just had my character running around. I had to create multiple lights as well and see what it looked like. And I could kind of recreate the look in a static image or in a static camera. But as soon as you move around, the problem that I was talking about before is going to be following you, because you're going to rotate the camera and you're going to get light hitting the character from a different angle. So it'll get fully hit by the blue light and then it just looks stupid. So, but for specific camera angles, for specific settings, I think it works pretty good. And overall, I think it was a successful little trial episode. With that said, thanks for tuning into this video. Hope it gave you a few helpful hints every here and there. And if you have any thoughts, put them in the comments below, and hit the like button if you like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in a video soon again. Bye for now.